All right, so let's get to our first headliner topic on this edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast, and that is that the 2025 Record Store Day Ambassadors have been announced for this year. The big day, Record Store Day, is happening on April the 12th, the biggest day for record buyers and music fans of the year, where they all show up early and line up at their favorite record stores to buy those awesome vinyl exclusives. And every year in Canada and the US, they announce a Record Store Day Ambassador, just like a Star Wars movie. And this year, Post Malone has been announced as the Record Store Day Ambassador down in the U.S. And he actually made a statement about being announced as the Record Store Day Ambassador. And it was pretty much, just run-of-the-mill stuff, but he talked about how much it means to him about going to record stores. Obviously, Post Malone is a big music fan himself. Going to record stores, digging through the crates, the sign of a true music fan. These are the hallmarks of a great music fan. So Post Malone talked about his own experience about going out and enjoying Record Store Day as a music fan. And last year's Record Store Day ambassadors were Paramore. So they're keeping it very modern with these current artists at the top of mind for Record Store Day. And, for the purposes of this podcast, Post Malone, not necessarily a rock artist, although he did start out playing a lot of rock and punk earlier in his career before he switched over to being more of a pop and hip hop and now a country artist. But I really do like Post Malone. I think he's a great artist. And, he went full country on his latest album, F1 Trillion. And, that album, it was better than it had any business being. Not to say that I had any preconceived notions about listening to a Post Malone record or a country record. I'm not a huge country music fan, but I really did enjoy that F1 Trillion record from Post Malone. I thought that was a really great record. And he can sing country with the best of them. I know it can be kind of trendy right now. It seems like every artist, whether it be hip hop or pop, Beyonce and artists like that, Post Malone going country. I know it can seem a little bit trendy, but I still think that it's pretty cool that Post Malone is going to be the Record Store Day ambassador for the U.S. And we're not really sure if he has an exclusive Record Store Day title available. The full list of releases hasn't been announced just yet, but that will be happening over the next couple of months, so we can appropriately plan for which of these vinyls we're going to try and battle everybody else for to get on Record Store Day. So we have Post Malone as the Record Store Day ambassador in the U.S. and internationally, but then here in Canada, we have our own Record Store Day ambassador. Yes, and here in Canada, we have our own Record Store Day ambassador, and that is the ambassadors for this year have been Big Wreck, one of my favorite Canadian rock bands. Big Wreck have been announced as the Canadian Record Store Day ambassadors. And, the thing about Canada is that we always need to have our own version of everything, right? We have our own versions of TV shows. We have our own artists, but like if there's anything that's American, like Record Store Day, we have to have our own equivalent. So we have our Record Store Day ambassadors here for Canada, and Ian Thornley and Big Wreck are going to be it for us, which I think is awesome, because I think Big Wreck, ever since the 90s, ever since the first record came out in 97, they've been one of the best Canadian guitar bands, one of the best rock bands out there. Obviously, Ian Thornley is next level when it comes to his singing and his songwriting and his guitar playing. Like, Ian Thornley is one of my favorite Canadian musicians. I really wish everybody listen to Big Wreck around the world, because they deserve all the attention that they get for their music. Absolutely love Big Wreck, and they are offering a Record Store Day exclusive for buyers, for Canadian record buyers this year. And that's actually this one's really cool, because it's an exclusive version of their 2012 album Albatross, which came out in 2012. That was their reunion album after Big Wreck initially broke up, and then they became Thornley. They got back together as Big Wreck, and this is the first time the Albatross album is going to be available on vinyl, which is really, really cool. So actually something, not just a different color version of an album you already have. This is the first time Albatross is going to be available on vinyl. It's going to be limited to 2,500 vinyl copies. And then check this out. This is something that I really enjoy. It's actually going to have 1,000 copies of a deluxe CD version as well, including a bonus track, which is called Fade Away. And I think that this is really cool. This is something that I would like to see more on Record Store Day, is a CD exclusive. And I know that for Record Store Day, all the record snobs are like, it's about records, it's about the vinyl, it's about the plastic, and it's about getting those sweet records, because records are better than CDs, I guess. But I don't necessarily agree with that, because most of my collection is on CD. Actually, you can see the CD tower right there. That's my CD tower. It's got all my CDs on it, or most of my CDs on it. And I love the compact disc. I love records as well, but I really think that if Record Store Day wants to move into the future, that they should offer more CD exclusives, because obviously we have a lot of nostalgia and a lot of feelings based around vinyl. But people in my generation, maybe a little bit younger, maybe a little bit older, we have the recollections of going to the record store and buying the CD copies of everything. And I really do think that over the next few years that CDs will maybe have that same sense of nostalgia attached to them as records do. Maybe not yet, but I still think it's cool that Big Rec is offering a CD exclusive for Record Store Day. Now, me personally, I don't really do Record Store Day all that often, although I feel like I have participated, at least in the last 2 or 3 years, because there's been a couple of Noel Gallagher exclusives that came out on Record Store Day. The Magic Secrets releases, I went to make sure I got those. There was a Biffy Clyro one that came out, the Modern ZP, which came out a couple of years ago. I made sure to get that. But other than that, unless there's something really, really cool that I want to get, I generally don't line up with everybody on Record Store Day, although I really, really do admire and support all the people that line up early for Record Store Day so they can get their exclusives and their fun stuff. And I think, at least for Canadian fans, if you're a Big Rec fan, there's a huge incentive to go to Record Store Day, because if you have all the Big Rec albums on vinyl, but Albatross isn't one of them because it hasn't been available on vinyl yet, this is your chance to go pick that up. So here in Canada, Big Rec is going to be the Record Store Day ambassadors. And then in the US, Mr. Post Malone is going to be the Record Store Day ambassador. And of course, Record Store Day, at least the spring version. There's a Black Friday version that'll be coming up in November. But right now, April the 12th is the date for Record Store Day 2025.